All right, and we will start the Affidavits of Candidacy training now. This is one of our 30-minute online or webinar trainings that we're providing to clerks to help those clerks receive their required number of hours for this election cycle that's coming up for us. We decided to break out Affidavits of Candidacy so that we could talk about the specific changes that we had in law that will affect all of your late candidate filings. But it was also so that you can review this video online later as we get closer to the actual candidate filing period. What will happen is after this training site, after these trainings are offered here the next couple of days, we'll send you out a link to the videos as well as a link to the form for you to certify that you've either attended them now or watched the videos later. So that'll all come out probably next week sometime or very early the following week after next week. But for purposes of this training, we are going to go through materials that you see on the screen there, spending most of our time actually talking about the affidavit of candidacy because, as I've mentioned in the in-person clerk trainings, that's changed significantly from previous elections. Because it is a 30-minute kind of quick hit of training, we don't plan any breaks or anything like that. And obviously, with you being at home or being at work, you can kind of take care of yourself as needed there. So let's get started with the content then. When we start out talking about affidavits of candidacy, we want to make sure that you get your notices published first. We also talked about that in our previous trainings, but we dropped the information here for you with the late filing period now happening 2 weeks early. So I'm not going to go through those details in this slide for you, but just remember that that is 2 weeks earlier and that you've got to comply with that publication and that posting requirement. You'll also see that we have it highlighted on this page that we are asking you to scan and email your completed affidavits as quickly or as promptly as possible. The law says that you have up to 24 hours, 1 business day to do that, but we would ask you to do it that same day, if at all possible. That allows us to just be on top of any potential issues sooner in that process. All right. As you're working through your role as the candidate filing officer for your local races, you're going to want to make sure that you have materials ready for any filers that are coming your way. That is going to be the affidavit form. We'll show you what that looks like. We'll provide you with the link to get those online. They're no longer being provided by the state of Minnesota as a 3-part carbonless form. And so what the state is saying is either have folks fill it out electronically on the PDF form itself, or as a clerk, just have those printed out so that folks can handwrite their affidavits. We'll show you again what it looks like, where to get those forms for you. You'll also want to contemplate whether or not you're going to provide campaign manuals. The campaign manuals are available in paper format. We have them in our office if you want them. But what we've found is most folks just prefer a link to it online, and we'll show you where we have it linked, and then you can actually just provide that information to your candidates if you want to do so. If you have any other information for your candidates, you can obviously include that as well. Phone numbers for incumbents, things like that, anything that you would be wanting to include in your packet, you feel free to do so. It's the affidavit that we need to make sure gets completed. So that would be it. I also will just make a note now and not talk about it again, really, is that if you do have a candidate who spends or receives contributions in total between those two activities, a total of $750 or more in this calendar year that they're going to be running for an office, they are going to have to complete campaign finance reportings. If you find yourself in that circumstance, give us a call. That's going to be the easiest way to work through that rather than try to explain all of the extra deadlines and filing requirements for that. Rarely is that an issue for us, and so we don't spend time training on it. All right. So another thing to prepare yourself as a candidate filing officer is to know what offices are on your ballot. For folks that have already completed the in-person clerk training, we've gone through this exercise to help you know what offices are on the ballot. But you're, of course, going to need to know that in order to help with the candidate filing process. What you're really going to need to know is what seat somebody is filing for. They might not know what supervisor seat they're filing for. They will usually know if they're filing for a council or a mayor or a clerk contest, But knowing what seats are on your ballot, who the incumbents are, will help you make sure that that candidate lists the right seat, the contest that they're wishing to file their candidacy for. You'll also need to know if you have any special elections, because that will come with a different term. So you'll want to make sure candidates who are filing to run in any special elections know what that term will be, how long they'll be serving in that capacity. Okay. Again, these sheets we worked with you on. If you have any questions about that, or you need us to help you review that or prepare for that, just send us an email and we will help you get there. All right, so for the affidavits, the filing basics, this screen is going to have that summary for you. What we want you to remember, what we want you to know, is that you need to use the new forms that are provided. If somebody does try to bring in an old form, you technically can't say no to it, but you have to validate that it has all of the information on it. So I would strongly encourage you to just have them refill out the new form, the form that is available first time for 2026 elections. It's going to look way different, so our returning clerks will be able to immediately identify it as a new form, and we'll show you what that looks like, but we really want to make sure you're using that. The other thing that we want you to remember right off the bat is that the office that the person is filing for is clearly identified. We will, on a pretty regular basis, see affidavits come in that say that the person wants to be the township supervisor. Even if there is only one township supervisor up for election, you still have to label that position, whether or not it's A, B, or C, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, whatever that looks like. You need to make sure that it lists that specific seat number or identifier on there. The affidavit is what will actually appear on the ballot, so capitalization and spelling matters. Make sure folks are using proper case, uppercase, lowercase, and that they're verifying that their name is spelled the way that it should be spelled. And that also includes any periods. So if they want their middle initial on there, if they don't put a period, it won't have a period. If they want junior on the affidavit and want that on the ballot, if they don't put in a period after the R, there won't be a period after the R. So pay attention to all of those details. We also are not allowed across the state to have any candidates that have a naming convention for the ballot that would provide them with some sort of an advantage. And so what that means, what case law has told us that means, is that they can't list if they're a doctor or have a doctorate. They can't try to incorporate into their name any sort of qualifications. So for example, saying that they're a 24-year township clerk or something like that would not be allowed. It has to be their name. It has to be how they're commonly known or identified in the community in which they're seeking election. Okay. You're going to collect the filing fee. The filing fee stays with you. That is your township or your city or your school district's revenue. That is not refundable. And as I mentioned in one of the training classes, we didn't talk about it in the second one, that filing fee needs to be collected. And if it is paid by check, it can't be, it has to actually be drawn on an account that has funds in it. If the candidate's check eventually bounces, that is a problem that we'll have to work through on ballots. So while you can't require it because it is a $2 fee for all of our late filers, collecting that in cash is probably your best bet, and then depositing into your revenue accounts as appropriate. We're going to talk about pronunciation when we see the affidavit, so just know that the law changed around pronunciation, and we'll do the same for address privacy. We'll talk about that on the affidavits. Okay. Remember that the filing period ends at 5 p.m. on that last day of filing, but then 2 days later we have that withdrawal period. So pay attention to that deadline as well, as a way for candidates who originally wanted to be on the ballot to decide they're no longer wishing to be on the ballot. Those get notified to us as soon as possible as well. Okay. So the new laws, I already mentioned one new law, the pronunciation. I mentioned a second new law, the address privacy. There's a third new law that we want you to be aware of, and this is a new requirement for you as the filing clerk. You are required now by state law to see proof of residence from the candidate when they're filing their affidavit of candidacy. So this would be a valid photo ID or any of those items that are listed on the screen. That little cheat sheet, feel free to take a screen print of it or print out these slide decks and use that. But that is essentially the same list of ways that people prove their residence for purposes of election day registration, and they all would work for purposes of filing an affidavit of candidacy. And what you're doing when you're viewing that driver's license or that other proof of identification and residency is you're verifying that that address matches the one that they're using on the affidavit. You're verifying that that proof was presented. You are not verifying that the person lives there. That is a whole different matter if somebody's going to object to the residency of the person being in that district that they're seeking an office for. All you're doing is saying as the filing clerk that when candidate A came in to file their affidavit of candidacy, I matched a driver's license or other proof of that address to the one that they provided on the affidavit. Okay. So let's actually start working through the filing process. So you're responsible for all of your local contests. So if you're the city clerk, you're going to have mayors, councils, and you'd also be accepting filings for hospital districts, but I don't believe we have any of those that we'll have to worry about. So cities are looking for mayors and council members, and it might be 2 council members, it might be a special council member, it might be a special mayor, but those are the offices that are filing with you. You can see the town ones are the clerk, the treasurer, the supervisor, as applicable, right? Some of those are appointed or whatnot. That's where you're going back to that original sheet we had worked on in our in-person training so that you know what offices to be looking for. The school district will receive the filings for their school district board members. School districts almost always have multiple board member seats up at the same time. And so since those are elected at large, they're not identifying which seat they want. They're just saying that they want one of those 3 seats or 4 seats, however many school board members are getting elected. How the filing will actually occur, it is essentially the successful completion of a form. You're going to verify the information on it. We'll show you what that means. You are likely going to serve as the witness, and you can do that either if you are a notary or because you've been empowered as a city or township or school board clerk to be a witness and to take oaths. So you have the ability to sign off on them under that capacity. And then you're also going to document on there that you saw the proof of residence. Okay. Your filing fee, it very well might vary. I believe we're at $2 for everybody, at least that I understand, for the offices that are being filed here. If that's a different number for you, great, use the number that you're instructed to use. But if you're not sure, you could look at previous elections or assume it is $2 for your offices. The filing fee is never refundable, and the filing fee stays with your jurisdiction. We've had cities and towns try to give those dollars to the county, and those are your dollars. Okay. So the affidavits now, we're moving into that section of the training. The affidavits of candidacy, as I've mentioned in all of our in-person trainings, have been redesigned. They are now color, but you don't have to print them in color. The reason they made them color was so that they jumped out more quickly to filing officers. And so you can see I've highlighted the one that you all will be using as city, town, or school district clerks. It's the one that would have the orange coloring on the top. If candidates are using the other ones, again, you'd have to verify that the information is what you need on your affidavit. So I would strongly encourage you to have them fill out the correct one. But again, the law can't really force that, but strongly encourage them to fill out the correct one if they're coming in with the other one, and always only have yours on hand, right? You only need the one that you can have filings received on. So, okay. Yeah, so let's dive into some detail on that city, town, and school district affidavit of candidacy. So what we're going to do for the next series of slides is break down each of the sections of the affidavit, and then we'll talk through what should be appearing in there, what that should look like. This first section is the candidate information section. As I already mentioned, the first thing that we need to make sure is getting filled out correctly is that the name, as they want it to appear on the ballot, is clearly printed or typed in this section. upper and lower cases, as I mentioned, punctuation, if they have any accents, anything that's associated with their name and the way that they're generally known in the community, that's what will go there, right? The next line in this section is the law change related to pronunciation. There is no longer a separate form to complete for pronunciations. What happens is the candidate is required to provide pronunciation, or they can leave this line blank. If they leave the line blank, then our technology, the device, our assisted voting devices, those express votes, have technology that's built into it that's quite smart that will actually pronounce the name as it's shown on the ballot. And it does a wonderful job at it. So for folks that have very common names, there's no reason for them to provide pronunciation. Leaving it blank lets us use the default. However, if a candidate wishes to phonetically spell their name or explain to us how their name should be pronounced, they're welcome to do it on that spot. Just let your filers know that if they leave it blank, it will be pronounced based on the technology that we use. And that gets it right. It does even really well with like the mix of the world, the McDermotts and whatnot. It knows how to do the MCs and all of that. It's quite smart technology. So yeah, have folks use that as necessary, but make sure filers know that they don't need to do that. They'll still have their name pronounced on the ballot. The last line is in this section is related to the office being seeked or sought. This is where you would be writing Township Supervisor Seat 1, right? Seat 2 or whatever. Make sure that you're getting that filled out entirely as necessary. The district, sometimes folks try to list like a legislative district or something like there. That doesn't apply for local contest. It's really getting at seat A, Ward 4, whatever that might look like for your filers. You'll see in our little orange box there of what to pay attention to. It says party is required for state candidates. Non-major party candidates would file something different. Remember, none of your contests are state contests, state candidate contests. So you'll see no spot on this form for party to be listed. And do not, or try your hardest to not have a candidate include any designation of party in their affidavit. These are public documents, and so it won't be used for anything for ballot production purposes, but it is something that someone could look at. So just let them know that since they're filing for a local office, there's no party requirements. Okay. The next section is the contact information section. This is a required section for all of our affidavits, for all of our filings. Candidates are required to provide an email or check that appropriate box if they legitimately do not have an email. If they don't have an email, you'll see the note there that says that there needs to be an address provided in the campaign contact section. Hopefully folks have emails. If you get stuck with that and you need more information, even after we explain that campaign section, let us know. But do know it is required by default for an email that is not governmentally assigned and a phone number for any and all of your candidate filings. Okay. If the candidate, so that's that section. And then we get into the address section. This is where the candidate can have, that filing can have some variability based on the candidate. And so we're going to break this into the left half and the right half of the affidavit. The residency section gives the candidate the ability to designate that they want their information to be private. If they want their information to be private, they would check the top box that says that they've certified that they meet one of those requirements. And as I've mentioned before, the law was changed to make that much broader. So the best way to explain it to a candidate if they're asking about this is that if they wish to have their address be private, they should check that box because they would meet the requirement under law that they would have a fear for their family's safety. It used to be a little bit more required than that, but that, like I said, the law has been updated. So if they don't want their address to be public on their affidavit of candidacy, they will check that first box to certify it, and then they're going to check the next box because that's saying that they're going to complete an address of residence form on the back side of the affidavit of candidacy. So that's if they don't want their address to be public, they fill out that side and they do nothing on the right side. If the candidate says, I don't care if my address is private, or they say they want their address to be public, then they're going to complete the right side of this section of the affidavit of candidacy. That's where they're going to list their street address, not a P.O. box. If they want to use a P.O. box, then they want their address to be private. And we'll explain what that means in a bit more, right? And how they're going to provide that. But this is where they would put their street address, their city, their state, and their zip code. Of course, for your local offices, the state and should be Minnesota, it needs to be Minnesota. If somebody's using a different address there, we have a problem. This is the address that you would be comparing to the driver's license if it's filled out in this section. Okay, so this is an either or. They either check both of those boxes because they want their information to be private, or they're going to fill out the side on the left, and that makes their address public and can be seen by anybody who requests a copy of the affidavit of candidacy. And it also becomes public on the state's candidate lookup website. All right, the next section is the section regarding campaign information. Oftentimes, actually, I should say almost always, your local filers will not have any campaign information. And so this section is going to be left empty or blank unless, and you can see the note in the orange box there, unless they checked those private boxes and did not provide an email. So let me back up here. So if they've checked these boxes, but have not listed an email, then they must complete this section. Right? But for 9 out of 10 year filers, they're going to either have made their address public here, or they've made their address private and provided an email. Then they don't need to do this section unless they want to. This is all optional in this section unless they were private with their address and they were not providing an email because they don't have one available. The whole reason behind that set of requirements is that the law says that if somebody's filing for office, the public has a right to get a hold of them. They usually can get a hold of them by going to their residence, but if they don't know where their residence is, then they need to be able to get a hold of them via email, or you need to give campaign information. That's why the law is written the way that it is written. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to move forward into the next section here. And this is where the candidate filing is going to swear or affirm that they are eligible for the office. The best practices instructions from the Secretary of State's office is that you ensure that the candidate spends time reading this. You don't have to read it to them, but before you would actually witness their signature or sign the affidavit yourself, you would want to make sure that they've spent some time reviewing it. It essentially covers what's required of them for office. Okay. Note that the affirmation, the signature bullet points that are listed there might be different on the specific form that you're using as opposed to some of the other forms because, for example, county sheriff, county attorney doesn't show up on the federal forms. So if you're looking and trying to compare across the forms and you're seeing different ones, don't worry about that. Just know that the ones that are on the city, town, and school district affidavit are the ones that that candidate should be reading. Okay. The last section or the bottom section on this form is for you as the clerk to also swear that you watched somebody complete that form or sign that form. Again, you all have that power as a clerk. You also would have that power if you're a notary. You would only apply your notary stamp if you're doing it under your notary authority. If you're doing it as a clerk, you would just sign it as a clerk and then date it, of course. The candidate signs and date it before you do that because that's what you're witnessing. Make sure that the date that the candidate's using is one that is either the same or earlier than your date, right? It should be the same because they're likely going to be doing that in front of you. I'll make a slight note that candidates do have the ability to file early if they're not going to be in the district during the filing period. If you have any candidates who are wondering about that, or if you're hearing about any incumbents who want to file again, but they're going to be on an extended vacation or something like that, give our office a call, send us an email, we'll help you through that. But it's so rare for our local filings that we don't spend time in the training to work through that. Next up for you is the reminders. This is on the back side of the affidavit of candidacy. These are reminders that will just help you as a filing officer work through some things. So it lays out the instructions that we've gone through here. I just have it up on the screen for informational purposes for you. Next up on the back side of the form is where a candidate is required to put their address only if they checked the private boxes on the front. This section is only done if they've checked the private boxes on the front. Do not have the candidate list their address twice, once on the front, once on the back, because we want to make sure that we know that the front is filled out right. And so if we have it, if we have both sides filled out, we have to figure out which one was the right way to do it. So this is only used if the candidate marks those private boxes on the front. You're going to just make sure it's completed in those instances. And then this would be the address that you're verifying to the driver's license to meet that new requirement in law. But again, this is only if the candidate is listing their address as private on the front of the affidavit. Okay. Bringing us home on the affidavit of candidacy then is this slide that shows what's happening in the upper right-hand corner of the front side of the affidavit of candidacy. This is your filing officer section. You're going to record a filing number, the amount for the filing fee, and how that payment was received. Then you're also going to check those boxes saying that you did verify an ID matched the address that was listed, not that the person necessarily lives there, just that the address matches. And then there's also a box for you to review the affidavit and say that you made sure it was complete. We would encourage you not to do this section until the very, very end. And we would also encourage you to not assign a filing number until you reviewed the affidavit, because your filing numbers are sequential for the filings you receive. So when you send them to us, we're going to be looking for 1, 2, 3, and 4 if we received number 4. If we get a filing number 4, but we don't have a 2 or a 3, we're going to be reaching out to you to figure out what's going on with that. So do this last and make the filing number the last thing you add on there, because you're going to want to make sure payment is available. You're going to want to make sure that the affidavit is complete. Okay. The original of the affidavit is always yours as the filing officer. So you would end up making a copy if you were going to provide one to the candidate. I'd encourage you to do that. And then you're going to scan that original and send it to the county for us to enter in. You are always going to hang on to that original. That is your record. Okay. I'd also strongly encourage you to have your candidates complete the certification of filing at the same time as their original affidavit of candidacy filing. This doesn't have to be completed for an affidavit filing to be complete, but we would strongly encourage you to do it. This is where the candidate is able to fill out the form that you have to get from them before you can issue them a certificate of election in November. So we just say collect it now so that you're all set on that. The candidate fills out it. It's a simple form for them to fill out, and then they're going to check the box, that the circle that says that they did not exceed 750, that second circle there, because that would be their intention. You can let them know that if it ever changes, they can come in and replace that form. But it's not going to happen for our local offices. And so usually we get that filled out all at the same time, and we are good to go with it. Okay. All right. Lastly here for us, the new laws are related to getting those affidavits to us timely. I already mentioned to you that it's 1 business day. The law does say that you only have to send us the names in full disclosure, but we are asking for the full affidavit so that we can give you a double check. We would be happy to make sure that you've got a complete affidavit before you have to go and try to emergency troubleshoot that. And so please send us the full affidavit so that we can do a double check for you. But just know that it needs to be done within 1 day. And then we enter those within 1 day into the state system. And so that would allow you to double check our work if you wanted to see that, or if folks wanted to see that their name was actually listed. So please send them to us same day. Know that you have the next day to do that. To wrap up here for you all, we do have some resources available online. All of our candidate information lives on the elections website for Blue Earth County. Feel free to use any or all of that. We have links to the affidavits of candidacy for you in that regard. So absolutely feel free to use that. And then also the Secretary of State's website has their version of that information, specific affidavits. They provide kind of bulleted lists for eligibility for those different offices. So both of those would be good resources for you. We have some common questions there for you. The hours question has been asked in both of our in-person classes. The law is pretty clear that on the last day of filing, you need to be in your office. That would be where your county business, or your township or your city business is conducted from 1 to 5. And then on the withdrawal day, the last day to withdrawal, you have to be there. It says until 5 p.m. What that actually means could mean that you're getting there at 4:50. It could mean that you're there from 1 to 5. It would be whatever your practice would be or what you're comfortable with for your practice. Okay. That is what we have for materials. Hopefully this was helpful. The resource will be kept online. We're of course always available for questions. And then I'm going to have Christy end the recording right now, and I see there's something in the chat, and we'll address that and make sure that we've got it handled, but we can end the recording, Christy.